The following presentation is part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network.
This is Pete Fletzer. On this episode of Around the Galaxy, we are talking to blogger Arezou Amin. Join us as we talk about the benefit of reading the novels more than once, and she helps me try to come to terms with my feelings on the Rise of Skywalker. So strap yourselves in, relax, and enjoy this journey around the galaxy.
Player, Morton.
We're having roast.
Why we're here?
I'm going to
Good.
feel like 100,000.
Deal. How are you?
It's like
It's nice to be saying, and we are actually seeing each other.
an hour to go.
And this is like the first time we've ever talked, which is quite...
Arezou, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I can't complain. Things are, we have a Star Wars conversation on a during quarantine, so
Nice to talk to somebody else for a change.
Yeah, yeah, instead of the wall, or in my case,
As long as the wall doesn't answer, I think I'm okay.
right. It's like when the voices in your head start responding, then it's time to get out maybe a little bit more. So we're I'm a little bit familiar with you, but maybe sort of introduce yourself and tell the world a little bit about your Star Wars perspective and your what drew you to Star Wars.
So my Star Wars perspective, my parents are nerds, so
Okay.
I was just raised in a nerd household, and I think about 97, I guess, when the tapes came out.
Mhm.
I guess my parents knew that episode 1 was going to be coming, so they sat my brother and I down. They're like, watch these, and we may have watched episode 4 before that. I don't remember.
Uh-huh.
And I remember being like, okay, this is fine. There's scenes that stuck out, but otherwise I'm like, sure. You kind of lost me by episode 6. I was like, I don't know what's happening anymore.
Right.
And then they took us to see The Phantom Menace, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Because, it was Padme and Obi-Wan Kenobi specifically. I was like, I love them so much. And then so what happened? Then the other ones came out. So I'm like, what happened after that? So episode 2 and 3 came out, and sort of in between those, it wasn't totally in my consciousness, in my awareness. Like I would just watch them when they came out.
Mhm.
And then it sort of stayed in the background of my life. They were like my comfort movies. Like if I just need something to throw on and just sort of watch, low commitment, that would be it.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, this is because I thought it was done. So I'm like, okay, this is just sort of something that's not going to change, and it'll just sort of stay
Right. You
this
just
way.
keep it in the background. It's like you'll always kind of have it there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Then episode 7 gets announced, and I was working at the Disney store at the time. So I was there for the announcement, and
Oh wow.
I think I left shortly before all the trailers started coming out and the products started coming out. And then I just dove headfirst into it and have stayed here happily since.
And you have a blog at arezouD2.com, and what's how would you describe it? What's the focus of that site?
So it started as a personal blog, and I will dip in with more personal pieces from time to time. But lately, since we've all been at home in lockdown, I am currently doing what I call biweekly book reports.
Uh-huh.
So I am going through the Disney era canon novels in a roughly chronological order. So right now, as of recording, Lost Stars is next, which I'm feeling a lot of pressure on because a lot of people love Lost Stars. I remember liking Lost Stars, but it didn't, I don't know, it wasn't like the be all end all when I read it, but every single book that I reread, my perspective completely changes, and I'm extremely excited. And then Princess of Alderaan is next, which is one of my favorites. So that's what's coming up next on my website.
Do you think it does your perspective change on the books because you've reread the other ones, or is it because the movies have changed your perspective on Leia and those characters? Or
I think it's because I reread them, because when I started reading them, like the first time around, it was just kind of whichever one I could get my hands on.
right.
So I was jumping all over the place. But now, a character like Rey Sloane, who I didn't realize was in A New Dawn, which is by John Jackson Miller. I didn't realize she was in it at all the first time I read it. Like reading Aftermath didn't make that connection because I was hopping all over the place. But now that it's more streamlined, I'm picking up on things I missed the first time.
Right.
And I'm also not rushing to see what happens because I tend to do that. So now I can like slow down, take my time with it, and I'm appreciating them a lot more now.
I think that's one of the things that I mean, I've even missed it myself. I don't, if I'm being transparent, I don't read as many of the books as I would like. Now that we're on lockdown, I'm not in the car as much, so I'm not even like I'm an audiobook person. It's a little bit just sort of the way I prefer to take that in. But
Right.
it is interesting, and I think people don't give it enough credit. It really is, in a way, very much Marvel University in that there are these little
Yeah.
connections that are total, blow off character here, but then they show up 3 or 4 books later.
Right. Exactly. And you had asked if the movies changed my perspective on the books. I think it's the other way around. Like there are things about the books that I then take with me in rewatching the movies. I'm like, oh, this changes everything about your motivation, about your backstory, about whatever. So it's another way to look at it, which I like.
So did you start when did you start reading the Disney canon books? I guess because I know you're sort of revisiting them, but have you been with them all along as they've come out around the movies, or?
No, I actually started last winter.
Okay.
So yeah, like January 2019.
Got it.
Because
yeah. So yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on the phrase? Because I'm torn on it, to be honest with you. You shouldn't have to read the book to understand the movie. Do you find that there's enough of the stuff in the books that makes the movies better to sort of almost mandate that you do read the books before the movies, or after at the very least? Or do you find? I mean, it might be tough for you to separate yourself at this point from it, but
I don't think you should have to read the book to understand the movie, not for something that is primarily a movie property.
Right.
I think like the way Marvel does it, I think is really cool in that if you've read the comics, then when you see that one post-credit shot of somebody in a costume, you're like, I know who that is, and then you can tell all your friends. But they will in the movie eventually tell you who that is, so it's okay.
Right.
But I don't think for something like Star Wars that you should have to read the book to understand the movie. And then I think part of the problem comes is when they add motivation or characterization in the book that then doesn't get carried over to the movie.
Yeah.
So then you have two people walking out of the theater with completely different points of view on the same person.
Yeah. And let me. So, did you read the Ahsoka novel?
I did.
By Johnston. Okay. I read it as well because I've become a huge Ahsoka fan. It's funny. I am the first to admit that when I first saw that movie, the Clone Wars film, and the first season or so of Clone Wars, I was like, the Snips character's got to go. She's driving me nuts. And now I believe, to me, she's one of the most important characters in Star Wars, period. Never mind Clone Wars or the novels or the films, like just one of the most important characters. I just love everything about her. And now actually I've changed my opinion of the older stuff. But having read the Ahsoka novel, how do you did you watch the Clone Wars series?
I did. I'm all caught up.
Okay, good. So I won't spoil anything. Spoilers coming up if anybody's listening. And but how did you take the ending based on what we know about her faking her death and the Rex connection? How do you feel it was connected? Because there are people saying it was retconned. I don't see it as such, but how do you see it as? Yeah.
I don't think it was. I think the nice thing about the way E.K. Johnston wrote it is that it is just vague enough that it works. So, she's talking about Ahsoka dropping her lightsabers at the grave. Okay, they're not tombstones, but it's pretty clear what she's done there with the helmets is that those are grave sites. And by leaving her lightsaber there, her trace, so to speak, then, anybody looking at it will be like, Ahsoka Tano was here. Ahsoka Tano must have killed them all because the Jedi are all evil.
Right.
So it's a perspective thing because it's also her, reflecting on her past. So it may not be a grave per se, but that's how she sees it.
Yeah.
So because it's from her point of view, I don't think it retconned it at all.
Yeah, I didn't see it that way at all either, and I actually felt like it was a great way to connect, all the things that we end up learning about her. And in fact, there was a moment where I thought they were going to take the Martez sisters and kind of pull them into the beginning of the Ahsoka novel, but then I realized that wasn't going to happen. But it was it's interesting that a character like that is evolving somewhat because of the novels. And again, I think Clone Wars, because it had 7 seasons and 20 plus episodes per seasons, other than the last 2, you can grow a character like you can in a novel, which you can't necessarily in a film. So I think that's great. So maybe how does Ahsoka rank among some of your favorite Star Wars characters? I'm looking at your pops that I see behind you there. I don't see an Ahsoka.
She's behind my
there's
head.
an Ahsoka pop. There she is.
Yeah, she's behind my head. She's right there.
So talk to me about some of your favorite characters in Star Wars. I don't think I'm saying anything at a place to say that you have collected all the female pops.
Yes, that's how I control my collection, so that it doesn't just some of the guys have creeped in. Kylo's in there, Finn and Poe, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Han. So Luke's not here.
The big names, other than the main guy, he can.
Other than Luke, well, because the way I worked it with the original trio is that I wanted the Funko from like the movie where they are my favorite character.
Okay.
And Luke is my favorite in Return of the Jedi. So I'm waiting for those Funkos to come out eventually, and then I will get Luke.
That's great. So maybe let me reframe the question a little bit. Where do you, as a fan who came in, I guess the prequels, you're sort of a prequel era
I'm
fan,
a prequel
right?
fan.
That's where you came in, right? How do you make a strong distinction between the characters in the books and the TV shows and the movies, or is it is it all just Star Wars? And the reason I said is because for me, I've funneled my way in, right? I started in 1977 at 7 years old, watched the movies, and so like that's Star Wars. Everything else is additional, and yes, it's becoming much more of a patchwork of all different characters, but by the time you came in, you were into another set of films, and people who are coming into, like my son, who's a Clone Wars nut, it's all Star Wars. So how do you see it? How did all the characters kind of work together for you?
I think I'm more along the lines of your son, is that it's all Star Wars to me, because I saw 4, 5, 6, and 1 within a very short time span. Right. I didn't have 20 years to reflect on what these movies are to me before a new set started.
Right.
So to me, it's all Star Wars, and the books feed into that. Like if there are movie characters in the books, like Han and Leia pop up a lot, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is my favorite character, pops up quite a bit. I see their movie versions when I'm reading it.
Right.
So like it almost like it jumps off the page to me, like, look, it's somebody you know. Like, particularly with movie characters, they feel more familiar. So
right.
So it all feels like one thing to me.
Are you excited about the rumored Ahsoka live action? How do you feel about that?
I'm excited to see Ahsoka in live action. I am less excited that I now have a very good idea about what's going on in Mandalorian season 2 casting wise.
Yes.
I would have liked to be surprised, but I'm excited to see her in live action. I don't know that I see it as a good fit for the Mandalorian. I think it'd be a better fit for Kenobi, but
yeah. I wonder, and I really think a lot about, like, and I've said this before on the show, and that is one of the greatest moments in not just Star Wars history for me, but entertainment history for me, is when the child showed up for the first time. I am so glad that was not spoiled. But now knowing that allegedly we're going to get Bo-Katan perhaps, and we're going to get maybe Tamara Morrison as one or more clones / Boba Fett, and we're going to get Ahsoka Tano, I wonder, and from a storyteller's perspective, what do they have up their sleeve from a story perspective that can offset the fact that I already know it's coming? I don't know what that might be.
I feel like maybe it'll be in flashback if we're thinking about sort of Din Djarin's life before he found the child. Mm-hmm. So I think like Bo-Katan fits in very naturally, and I love Katie Sackhoff, so I'm just very happy that Bo-Katan's coming. So Bo-Katan fits in very naturally. I think having Rex or Boba or any of the clones fits in very naturally. It's Ahsoka where I'm like, I guess that she's Bo-Katan's friend and she helps with the siege of Mandalore, but that's where I don't see how that fits.
Right.
So if they want to surprise me and make it fit amazingly, and I'm like, I can't believe I ever thought of the show without Ahsoka, then fine. But right now, I'm just not sure how that's going to work.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because they've left, and this maybe this is just Dave Filoni being either a. I think he's a brilliant storyteller. I don't want to
I
minimize him at
agree.
all because I think he learned from George. And the way I was saying it the other day was I loved in the Gallery series when he's sitting around the table with all these like big time Hollywood people, and he's like the nerd at the table, and I love that because I think we all are. Those of us who listen to a Star Wars podcast or follow somebody like me on Twitter, like we're in that nerd zone, right? We're like, well, of course the lightsaber does that, like. Whereas I'm
Yeah.
not so sure that Bryce Dallas Howard is like really asking those questions so much. I mean, I'm sure she's getting there, but like Dave lives there. But what I think is really interesting is the way Dave has left two gigantic gaps for Ahsoka that he can explore and take it wherever he wants. He'd left it at the end of Clone Wars and all those years
Right.
before Rebels, and now he's left after Rebels where she's with Sabine, which I think is really interesting. And I think if we're going to get Ahsoka in Mandalorian show, I think we're going to get Sabine as well. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, that would be good. I'd like to see Sabine. I like Sabine.
Yeah, Sabine was one of those. Sabine and Hera actually were two characters. I actually fell in love with Hera. At first I was like, she's a little bit not my type of character, but by the time it all ended, I think she was my favorite character on the show. I loved Kanan, of course, like everybody did, because he's the ultimate Jedi. But I think I just loved Hera. Was a rebel, like through and through, and
Right.
she like personified that. Here, I'm interviewing myself now with you on the screen.
I was just going to jump in and say, like, with Ahsoka, you're saying he left all these gaps. There's also that gap, like you said, after Clone Wars, and then I guess slightly after the novel, when Ahsoka becomes a Fulcrum agent for Bail Organa.
Right.
And now with the Cassian series and the rumor that Bail Organa is going to be there, I'm like,
Right.
Is Ahsoka going to now pop up in Cassian? Is she going to be that character that just sort of pops up in every show for like an episode? Is that now what's happening? I don't know. I'm just talking out loud. I have no answers.
It could very well be, and it's funny. We don't. I mean, it's interesting. I find it very interesting that Disney has said that the lockdown isn't going to affect the timing of the release of The Mandalorian, which means that it's all in the can, right? Everything's been shot, and if Rosario Dawson truly was and truly is Ahsoka in the show. I'm trying to think, even from an age. Obviously, you can age people up and down now. It's so crazy what they can do with the films. You don't even need a young version. They could have aged down Harrison Ford or something, but
Right.
for Solo. But it's funny you say that, because I also thought about Cassian and thought it would be cool if Rosario Dawson was shooting for that. But again,
and then they just thought that was for The Mandalorian, but it was actually for Cassian.
Yeah, I mean, these rumors are just rumors. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But, what I think the thing that I love too is I would love to see a Thrawn come back.
Ooh, yes.
And we just don't know. We don't know how these different species age either. So,
Right.
And I know I'm getting now I'm slipping sort of into the Star Trek side of the world, which scares me. But because I think we all make major assumptions on age and things for these characters. But it would be great to see her sort of be a thread in a way between the prequels and, I mean, she was in the
sequel era even.
Yeah, well, even right. We heard her voice at the end of Rise of Skywalker. So, all right. Well, thank you for interviewing me today. This has been a lot of fun. It's like a therapy session. I just started talking and I just ran with it. But
that's how conversations go. It's not on me.
but so we were saying before. So you blend a Sabine and a Hera and Bo-Katan and Leia and all these characters together. That must make reading the novels a very rewarding experience, because you're getting them all together.
Yeah, it does, because like I mentioned before, like sounding like I think they're my friends, like having these familiar faces pop up in the book sort of gives me like a through line. Like, okay, I'm following somebody familiar and they're going to show me all of these new things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm trying to think of anything. Like A New Dawn, which is Kanan and Hera.
Right.
So it's the whole side of like empire, industrial corruption, and just complete carelessness and callousness, but through their eyes. So it's a story that if it was two characters I didn't know, it's still horrific, but I feel like I'm there because I already know who's with me. So that's how I see it. Yeah.
Right.
Did that answer your question? I have no idea.
No, I'm sure it did. No, it's great. And I think that's what's really kind of interesting about these characters too is they're sort of each one of them is bringing a different facet, and I think by adding this menagerie of characters to Star Wars, it's no longer just farm boy, princess, scoundrel. It's
Right.
now we're getting all the gray area, and we're getting all the really interesting, like Cassian. That the reason that film worked for me is because of the fact that it was the first time where you started to go, well, maybe I know what the rebels are trying to do, and I love what they mean, but the means of getting there is a little bit
Yeah.
is questionable. So
And what I like about all the new stuff is, in A New Hope, we care about the cause because Leia cares about the cause, because Leia just watched her planet blow up. But going more in depth with the rebellion, we sort of see why everybody cares and why it's not just Leia and her cause. It's everybody's cause, and this is why.
right,
Like, Cassian has been in this fight since he was 6 years old, so something clearly happened when he was very, very young.
right,
And like Bodhi sees what's going wrong from the inside and wants to stop it, and Jin just has the saddest life imaginable, and then finally turns things around. So that's what I like about the new era, is it's telling me why everybody cares.
right. Yeah, it struck me not too long ago that the original trilogy positioned, for example, the Jedi Knights as this sort of untouchable, sort of perfect form of guardian, right? And then the
Right.
prequels started to show their weaknesses and the fact that they got a little bit blinded by themselves. And then I give a lot of credit to Clone Wars for really like nailing that home in a couple places, especially in that last season. And so
Yeah.
I think in 1977, the world was a different place, and you could buy a knight in shining armor kind of story.
Right.
Now, that story doesn't play, and it's interesting that, and maybe that's one of the great things about Star Wars as a story is that you're able to, it's evolving with the people who love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what I like about what the prequels did with the Jedi Knights is, you hear of them as heroes, and Obi-Wan Kenobi's telling you that they were heroes, and then you go back and in the Phantom Menace, yeah, they're kind of heroic and they're kind of awesome, and then Anakin grows up in this system that he was not living in from the beginning, because all of them raised in that system, this is all they know, so of course it's fine.
Correct.
But then Anakin grows up in there and goes, well, this isn't fine. I miss my mom. I'm falling in love with this lady, and this is a problem. And Obi-Wan's like, it's not a problem if you don't let it be a problem, so just don't let it be a problem.
Right.
And then on the political side, you sort of see that they're getting way too ingrained with this republic and with Palpatine having too much power. And then you sort of, why I love Revenge of the Sith is because you sort of see how they became too big to fail and then immediately crumbled.
Right.
So yep. I love that about the prequels, is that you sort of watch this tragedy in slow motion, and it's going to end badly, but you think maybe just this time they'll pull through.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's very true, and I think that's what's added quite a bit of interest even to the sequels, because the sequels then start to really kind of address what happens once the heroes fall. And
Right.
you and I talked a couple minutes before we got on, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure how deep we'll go into it, but I think that's, to me, one of the great things about Rian Johnson's story. And this is and maybe we'll get a little bit to social media and a little bit to the way people are responding to the story and the reasons why. But I will admit, The Last Jedi is probably the one film that I don't grab off the shelf that often, because it's not a popcorn munching movie, right?
It's a lot.
But it's a really well done movie, and it's funny. I always liked it. I walked out of the theater the first time I saw it and said it was both the best and worst Star Wars movie I'd ever seen, and because it was such a great movie, but it wasn't a typical, not a great, but not a typical Star Wars movie. But what was interesting was, as I watch some of the social media explode around it, what people don't realize, and I'm making an assumption that you're a fan of The Last Jedi, of the three films.
Yes.
Yeah.
The correct assumption.
I find it very interesting that, and this actually ties to what we were saying before, is that the message from The Last Jedi, to me, if I had to sort of pull one big message, is that your heroes aren't who you expect them to be. And the funny thing to me about the people who responded so negatively to The Last Jedi is because their heroes weren't who they wanted them to be.
Right.
And it's interesting, that kind of response to Luke, who did what, you know what, I hate to tell you, it's exactly kind of what every Jedi that we've known before has done, has sort of gone within himself to try to deal with what's going on. How did you respond to Last Jedi? Let's start with that one. I mean, because I think everybody, Force Awakens, I think is a
Good
fun
setup,
movie.
standard
Yep.
popcorn film.
Exactly.
We got
right.
our threads. We know who everybody is. Okay, so here's my thing on Luke in The Last Jedi.
All
And
right.
people are going to come after me, and I'm dreading it already. So here's my thing. The way we leave off in not The Last Jedi, oh my God, in The Force Awakens, when we hear about Luke, we have Han say, a student went rogue and broke the temple. Luke went looking for the first Jedi temple. We don't know where he is. Okay. So then Rey goes and finds him. Here's where we're left now. Either Luke, something went wrong with the student blew up the temple, and Luke's like, I'm out, and goes to look for the Jedi temple. His sister's son has gone to the dark side. His best friend just died. Everything's going wrong, and he's still chilling on his island.
Right.
Which makes him look like a massive dick. or he
Right.
is
Choice one.
responsible for why this kid blew up the temple. He's responsible for partly responsible for his sister's son making the flip to the dark side. And now he's cut himself off from the Force. So
Right.
he doesn't feel that his best friend has died. He doesn't feel the grief his sister's feeling. So that's why he's still on his island. I'm like, that makes you, you've done things wrong. You have failed your family, but I'm not going to fault you for not knowing that, because you've essentially gone off the grid.
Right.
So then he's there off the grid, and then this girl comes and says, we need you. And he's like, clearly you don't, because the last time somebody needed me, things went horribly wrong.
Right.
So maybe things are better if I just don't come back. And then she's like, well, fine, then I'll go fix it. And then he has that realization that, Yoda talks to him, and then he sort of takes that pacifist Jedi approach, that he's just going to stand there and kind of let this kid deservedly vent at him while everybody else runs away. And then he's at peace with himself, because he has made it right, essentially. So I think that's a great character arc.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because I think that's why when I walked out of Last Jedi, I felt like there was no need for a third film. And I think that's why I think that's why it didn't, they ended on the Falcon. Leia says, we have everything we need here. There's a little bit of hope that Star Wars lives on, and you can go from there. And I think I think that's, and the story, as you just said, is pacifism. And I hadn't thought of it. This is why I love doing the show, because I love talking to people, getting different perspectives. And pacifism is how Luke beat the Emperor and Vader in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
Threw his
it
saber
worked
down.
before, it'll work again.
And I never looked at it as pacifism, but you're right. He let Kylo let himself out, and it's still at that point gave Kylo the option to, you can fix yourself, buddy, or you can still stay angry. But either way, let it. It's like with my 7-year-old son. Go ahead, let it out. Are we still mad, or do we understand what's going on? And it's the same kind of thing. And JJ set that up perfectly for him in the first one by showing this, this emo kid is what I like to, be that boomer almost. I'm not really a boomer, but that Gen X guy is like, I don't get that kid, but I get the anger, and he did let it out. And then
okay, so this is where you're saying there's no need for a third film. I think it ends the way The Empire Strikes Back ends, on that we are at our lowest point,
right?
But there is hope for tomorrow. There's hope for this fight to continue. So let's take that spark of hope and see it through.
Right.
So, oh God, we're going to get into this. My problem with episode 9.
Let's do it. Let's go ahead to episode 9.
There are many.
I'll give you a little bit of a soft landing by saying publicly once again that I'm still up in the air on episode 9. There's pieces of it that I think are awesome, and there's pieces that I literally am like, what happened there? So, okay, with that, Go to town.
Let me preface this by saying every single movie as a thing made by people is not going to be perfect, and I know that.
Correct.
There are bits of episode 9 that I like.
Right.
However, the bits I don't like outweigh that, so it makes it hard for me to like the movie. But because we were talking about Luke and Kylo Ren, so Kylo Ren starts episode 7 as this like very tightly wound, really angry, as you said, emo kid who has these bursts of rage.
Yep.
And then in episode 8, the bursts of rage become more frequent, and he's like, killing his father, split his soul in half, and like he's just not doing okay.
Right.
And then where we leave him in episode 8 is he's now the Supreme Leader, which I don't think he wanted to be.
Right.
I think he's just kind of looking for this belonging on the dark side that he is not having an easy time finding. And then, sort of setting him up to get even more unhinged. And then I thought eventually deposed by Hux, and he goes running back to the rebellion. I don't know what I thought was going to happen.
Right.
But then we get back to episode 9, and he's exactly the same tightly wound emo kid he was when we first met him.
Right.
And the way he's talking to Rey, it's like, do you guys not realize that you had a forced Skype call for an entire movie? Like, It's like you don't know each other.
Right.
So I'm like, we've gone back, and now you need me to go all the way forward again.
Yeah.
Like sort of, 3 steps back and then one giant Superman leap forward to Ben Solo in the last third of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
That's my problem.
No,
that was my problem with his arc. I do not like the fact that he died at the end. I don't think that's what any of his family wanted. They all died to try to bring him back to the light, and no. So that's my issue.
I don't disagree. I would have been surprised if he didn't die at the end. I just felt like that was kind of the sort of simple way out, right?
It's the easy way out.
Exactly. And that's why I thought that's unfortunate. But I do think all the problems that I had plot-wise with the film could have been fixed, if not all of them, but because there's some that there's no way you fix them. But had they made it episode 9 part 1 and part 2, because I think if we had ended episode 9 part 1 with the Han Solo scene where he becomes Ben Solo again, and we get a whole Ben Solo movie. And look, I'm not
Don't say Ben Solo movie to me. That's just gonna break my heart.
I know but if we had gotten him as Ben for an entire movie fighting for good, he then could have also survived because he would have fully redeemed himself, right? Versus Vader couldn't live at the end of Jedi because he saved himself for his son, but the galaxy still had a real big problem with him, and rightfully so. But if Ben could have done something to save the galaxy, it may have worked, and then you don't have to take that lazy way out and have him die. And
which is sort of why I thought, with the dirty look that Hux is giving him at the end of 8, that within the first act of the movie that he was going to get deposed.
Yeah.
And then sort of have I don't know what the redemption moment would have been, but have maybe a conversation with Han. I don't know, but a redemption moment, and then spend the next 2/3 of the film, because I didn't think we were going to get a whole other movie. Yeah. In the next 2/3 of the film with the rebellion as the mole, trying to make things right, make it okay. Because you saw what happened when Hux said he was the spy. Poe came around like that. He was fine with it.
Right.
He's like, cool. Yeah. I knew it. And that's the end. This is like, don't give me that none of them would have trusted him. They would have been like, especially if Leia's right there, they would have been like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. All right, this is a dangerous question, but then I'll ask you, and then we'll see if you still want to talk to me. How did you feel about the Rey Skywalker bit, and why?
I gotta back up. I don't like Rey Palpatine at all.
Nope, I don't either.
I listened to your interview with Shannon, actually. Like that reason, that's why. Because we have the legacy boy. And actually the sequels have a legacy boy. They have Ben Solo. So we don't need another legacy character, and then his entire plot became her plot, and now he has no plot.
Right.
So I thought if you have to bring Palpatine back, fine, bring Palpatine back. But I don't like Rey Palpatine. And I think because of that, I was like, on Rey Skywalker at first. By the end of it, I'm fine with it. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, let's pretend the Palpatine thing didn't happen. You still want to claim this Jedi identity because you've come to terms with yourself as the last Jedi, as the one who's going to carry this movement forward. and the Skywalker family was the last great Jedi family. So, okay, I understand that. I don't mind it at all. How do you feel about it?
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I figured out a way to fix it so that everybody would be happy. And tell me what you think about this. So when the old lady comes and says, what's your name? And she says Ray, and I said, Ray what? If she simply said, I'm a Skywalker, if they put in the letter A, it would have been so interpretable by everybody. Everybody would have been happy with it, right? A Skywalker, she could have that's my adopted family, right? Leia's a Skywalker, although she's a Solo, but she's an Organa. She's a Skywalker. Luke is a Skywalker, and then she could say that, or it could be what some people thought would be sort of the beginning of a new age of Jedi that are the Skywalkers.
The Skywalkers, yeah.
Or simply saying, hey, I'm Pete Fletzer, but I'm a Skywalker. I believe in what he fought for, and I believe in that sort of way of thinking. So I think a simple way of doing it would have been just adding that. That way it could have been interpreted any way you wanted. I felt like
I felt the focus on a family name as a whole was unnecessary. Because Finn doesn't have a last name. Nobody seems to mind.
Right.
So, I mean, Finn probably minds, but nobody else seems to mind. So I think the only reason they made that the focus was because of the Palpatine thing.
Yeah.
Which I have an issue with just generally because, as a book nerd, when Luke tells Rey that Leia knew you were a Palpatine and chose not to say anything. Mm-hmm. But in Bloodline, Leia feels super guilty about not telling Ben that his grandfather was Darth Vader. Right. And then when he finds out, spoilers if you haven't read Bloodline, when he finds out anyway, she can't get a hold of him to find out how this is affecting him. And I think clearly it didn't affect him well, given where he went after that.
Right.
But, so Leia knows from personal experience that keeping a dark secret like this from a kid doesn't help them. So I don't know why she wouldn't tell Rey if she knew. She didn't tell her because this wasn't a thing until they started making episode 9.
100%. So, yep. Yeah. And I think, and then we can stop with this co-therapy session on Rise of Skywalker. But I think one of the things
I keep going.
Too, I know we could do it. But I think the Palpatine issue to me is just it's so. I think that, again, like I was saying before, I don't get too Star Trekky on this sort of stuff. I don't need everything scientifically explained to me. But there was so much ambiguity about is this latest Palpatine a clone or not?
Yes, apparently.
Is her father a clone? Yes.
Also, yes.
Yes. But it's like, again, as we started the conversation with, you have to go read to get that stuff. Now, all that said, what's most interesting about Rise of Skywalker to me is, and I've definitely said this before on other shows, but it's interesting to keep going back to me, is that friends of mine who what I would call sort of casual Star Wars fans, my friend Jerry Cable calls them normies, they walked out of Rise of Skywalker like, I don't know if I like that. It was, not Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi. I don't know if I like that. I don't know how I felt about that. That was a little weird. But they all walked out of Rise of Skywalker like, that was cool. That was fun. Like, so the casual fan isn't like saying, wait a second, so those Snokes in a barrel, what's that all about? And what's, they weren't asking those next, they just sort of said, oh, that Emperor guy is back. Okay.
Right.
Because when you go to see a Marvel movie, Thanos is back. All right, cool. Yeah, no problem. We got the bad guy again. And so, and this is where it becomes a challenge, and why The Last Jedi is so important to the Star Wars saga is Last Jedi took apart the Star Wars story and asked a lot of questions and put it into and I have to say, I like Last Jedi more now that I saw Knives Out. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but I think it's because
why not?
Because I understand
Rian Johnson better.
I understand Rian Johnson better. And now I know what he was doing with Last Jedi. And right now, anybody who listens to me that is like on the anti-Last Jedi or anti-Ryan Johnson just deleted their subscription and they're gone. But that's okay.
Currently in my mentions right now, they're making my life miserable.
They're attacking you right now. It's getting
Yeah.
bad. But
I can see you guys.
But the point is, it was a very different type of movie, and JJ I think is a really good action movie, and the way I described it. And I don't know if it was just me. I think I think I may have seen it somewhere else as well. Is I think Ryan was a Star Wars fan, and I think JJ was a Star Wars movie fan, right?
Right.
And that I feel like Ryan like looked into what Star Wars could mean, and JJ made fun Star Wars movies. He made A New Hope, right?
Yeah.
And Ryan made Empire and Revenge of the Sith, right? He made the movies that are kind of at that second level where there's it's not just, buy a bag of popcorn and have and there's nothing wrong with either type of movie. They're both so much fun and they're both super enjoyable, but it's causing a challenge, I think, among the fan base. So let me get your perspective on what's happening with the fan base right now. Not right now. I mean, for the last 3 or 4 years.
I don't want to touch that.
Okay, it's fine.
No, like the newest stuff, I don't want to wade into. But I think there is just because I can't speak to it properly, I just kind of watch it happen and go, I'm so sorry for everybody here. Everybody looks so upset. But what's going on? I think if we were all at Star Wars Celebration, sitting in a room, I don't think any of this would have happened.
Right.
Just talking. People get a lot more civil in person than they are when they're behind a keyboard.
Right.
And I think tone doesn't convey, and I think, intention doesn't convey. And I also think like I know this is going to sound real rich coming from me, having just completely savaged episode 9, but it's like what you like, and that's fine.
Right.
I'm happy for you if you like what you like. I don't understand the need to make everybody hate the thing you also hate.
Right.
Like, definitely speak very highly of the things you love and try to make other people love them. Like, be like, this is what I loved. Why don't you can you love it too with this new perspective? But don't make other people miserable if they didn't like the things or if they like the things you don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's this need to kind of learn.
You need to be right.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's I've used this example a bunch, and that is, if you have a favorite musical artist and you love their first 5 albums, and that 6th album is not what you want, you don't lose those first 5. And I'm not going to fight anybody who likes that one, and just because I don't. And I think it's that same. There's, I was mentioning to you before we got on. There's this guy who's been kind of trolling my account, and every time I post something, he's got sort of a you're a social justice warrior kind of approach to what I'm saying, which is insane because I don't ever really go down that road. But that's a whole other podcast for another.
But you don't agree with him, therefore.
Correct. Right. Therefore, you're something that I don't like immediately. Right. And I think what I realized is what social media is at times is it's a strategy game for people, right? If you're sitting with your phone and I'm trying to get you to a point where I have beaten you in the conversation. Right. And I think that's what it is I'm going to, can I pull Arezou into this conversation so deep that I know that I've pissed her off and I win? Or on the, and that's what I was just doing with this guy is I asked him a couple questions that he wasn't able to answer because I knew what the answers were. And if I got those answers from him, he would lose the battle. So he walked away, and it becomes this weird sort of, it's a strategy game, and it's not fun. And
I'm guilty of doing that in person with not being able to back down from an issue. Cause I'm like, no, but you don't understand. Like, I'm trying to not do that, but I'm definitely guilty of it. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like the fandom is so big. There is so much here to love.
Right.
And you are absolutely within your rights to advocate for, the type of story you want to see, to advocate for to express why things have upset you, like me ranting about episode 9 for 40 minutes. You're absolutely within your right to do that, but there's just so much to love too. It's saving what you love, focus on that while also, we love this, but here's how it can do better in a constructive way,
Right.
not just this ruined my childhood. It didn't. Your childhood still happened. If all it took for your childhood to be ruined was, God, I don't know, was, you know, a girl being a Jedi, I worry for the state of your childhood. But
how do you respond to some of that sort of backlash or the thinking or the negativity toward so many female characters, right? As soon as High Republic came out, people immediately were like, "Oh, of course, there's a female Jedi in the lead," and of course, it's a small population, but enough of a population to gain attention. And how do you respond to that? And how do you think it impacts Star Wars in both a positive? What's How would you describe the positivity that it comes from suddenly not caring if it's male, female, gay, straight, Wookiee, Twi'lek, whatever? I mean, why do you think people have a problem with that?
I feel like anytime somebody says, I don't care if they're a man, woman, gay, straight, pink, or purple, I'm like, you want a white guy. Like, that's what you want, whether or not you're saying that's what you care about.
Right.
Like, they're like, just let it be a good story. I'm like, but I don't understand why having a female lead or a gay lead or a lead who is a person of color, why that automatically makes it not a good story.
Right.
That's what I don't understand. So I think the backlash is ridiculous. I think the books aren't coming out till August, so we have no idea what this story is going to be like.
Right.
And, you know, it looks like there's somebody for everybody in the High Republic. If the female lead of who's writing the adult novel, I don't remember.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Is it Charles Soule or is it Kevin?
Charles Soule. Yeah, Kevin's doing the comics and Charles doing the
So if you don't like the female lead in Charles Soule's book, there's Claudia Gray's book that has a male lead. Go try that. Go try the comics. Like, it's so big. There is something for everybody.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So
and
calm down is what I'm trying to say.
I find it most interesting because Star Wars has never been. It has never shied away from. I mean, if you look at it by today's standards, yes, 1977 Star Wars was one woman and all
bunch
men,
of guys.
right? But the difference is, in hindsight, that one woman was so powerful as a character for 1977. It was a bit groundbreaking. So people who say that this is new haven't been paying attention, or they're not applying reality to it. I don't think. I mean,
and like jumping ahead to the prequels, still, one central female character, but she has a whole girl gang. So you know what I mean? So that's a different thing. It's the era of girl power, Spice Girls, and hey, she has a girl gang. So that was really cool. And she was running a deception under everybody's nose the whole time. So then she had a bit more agency. And then, it's very unfortunate what happened to her in the end, but we kind of knew that had to happen for the story to progress.
Right.
As unfortunate as that was. And then jump ahead to the sequels. Now we have a female lead, and we have a female lead, and we have some female, secondary characters, and we have older women and younger women and women of color. And like, it's getting better.
Yeah.
I think it still has a long way to go though, but
yeah, I think you're probably right. And I think I'm always hopeful. As I think I mentioned before, I have a 7-year-old son and a 10-year-old little girl. And she when she saw Rey when she was 5 years old, because that was when the film came out, before she even saw the movie, she had identified with her just like I did for Luke Skywalker and Han Solo.
Yeah.
Like she ran upstairs, created her own Rey costume before she even saw the movie. And if that opened a door for her to become a Star Wars fan, then it works, and it doesn't matter. And it's I'm always, and I think it's probably also, if I'm being totally honest, to have children who I hope will grow up in this better world that we want everybody, that we hope that every generation gets a little bit better. Hopefully just that kind of color blindness or whatever to what the new Star Wars helps them not ask the question, like, why isn't there, why is Lando the only African American in the entire Star Wars universe, right? Why, or person of color? Because obviously he wasn't American or African, because he was from, where was he born? That's right. So it's best been American. I don't know. But but if it opens doors for everybody to enjoy it, and I think that's when good science fiction works is when you can address some of the social issues and still keep it entertaining.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So
Yeah, I would agree. Like when I was your daughter's age, this is a little bit off Star Wars topic. I'm actually going to talk about the Mummy for a second. When I was your daughter's
you will
age,
be the first person to talk about the Mummy on the show, so that's
on
great.
this podcast. Okay, sorry guys, sorry everybody, you're here for Star Wars. I'm about to talk about some early 2000s pulp. So, like, for some reason, my cousins and I were completely fixated on the Mummy and the Mummy Returns. And one female cousin and I used to, I don't know if anybody remembers this, there was a sword fight between the two female characters in the movie, and we used to recreate this in the backyard all the time, because for the first time in our childhood, we don't have to fight about which one of us got to be the girl in any pretend scenario. And this is like a 2-minute sequence in a very pulpy fantasy horror movie.
Right.
So going forward back to Star Wars is that with a wider range of representation, kids won't have to fight over who gets to be who if they're playing. If they would prefer to, like, if a girl would prefer to play as a girl, if she wants to play as one of the guys, cool. And vice versa with the guys. But like, they don't have to fight over it anymore.
Right.
So that's what I like about it.
It's
and why I think people need to calm down about having more than one girl in their Star Wars.
And it's a Star Wars, it's a fantasy universe that doesn't exist. We can all, if you can't deal with it there, you're certainly not going to be able to deal with it down at your local supermarket or whatever.
in this universe, in this Star Wars universe, there are canonically at least 36 genders. So everybody really needs to relax if there's a girl or two in the
chill out and enjoy your Star Wars. That's right. That's well, cool. Well, I'm at the point in the show where I have my 10 questions section. Cool. So I don't know if you're ready for that. I'm going to throw these at you. And
all right, I'm ready.
Let's have some fun. Okay. So with all those books behind you, I will ask you, what is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book? You can do one or each or all or none or whatever.
The favorite book, I'll start that first, is Bloodline.
Right. Bloodline.
I love Bloodline. It's just very character study of Leia, which I love. Or Master and Apprentice, which I got a new appreciation for the second time I read it. So Master and Apprentice or Bloodline. I'm a Claudia Gray fan. Can you tell?
I can tell. And you know, if I get through a novel once, I'm happy. You're going through these things twice. But maybe I should, because it sounds like you get so much more out of them the second time.
I definitely recommend the second time around.
All right.
Favorite movie though, favorite movie just for what it is, Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
But if I want the cozy, comforting one, The Phantom Menace. Because that was my gateway one. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Interesting.
It's my cozy one. So The Phantom Menace. That
again, that's the second time I've said it on the show, but the reason I love doing the show is just to get that different perspective. And I can tell you that as a 1977 Star Wars first timer, Phantom Menace it took the longest for me to come around to really enjoying. I don't know if you probably didn't see it, but the reason I got back into the fandom from doing my writing back in the 90s was, for some strange reason, I decided to write a fan fiction novelization of The Phantom Menace. So if you ever run out of books, you can go download my free ebook. And what I did was I wrote it knowing the canon we know today, and I wrote it almost sort of like the way I can't think of the guy's name who writes Game of Thrones, probably because he's been in the news.
George R. R. Martin.
Right, Georgia. I sort of wrote it as if it's the book version of a movie similar to Game of Thrones, that there was enough differences. But what it did was it gave me a new appreciation for the movie, because I watched it a number of times and I looked into it a little bit differently. And then I started to see the connections through the saga in a different way. And so I've become a fan of Phantom Menace. It was at the bottom of my list for a very long time, and now it's about 3/4 of the way down. So it's.
I just want to put it out there for people who are like, kids don't want to hear about politics in their Star Wars movie. Return of the Jedi confused the hell out of me. I had no problems following the Phantom Menace like a year later.
Really?
I didn't get the depth of like the Trade Federation. I didn't get like really how far deep it was going. I'm like, these guys are bad. They're doing something illegal on her planet, and she's trying to stop them. Fine.
That's all you need. That's right.
That's all I need. So I had no trouble following it, just as a defense for all the prequel kids out there. We are smarter than a lot of people think.
That's great. All right. So I have to ask the corollary, which is, what is your least favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
You get one guess what my least favorite movie is.
Yeah, I think we just talked about it for 40 minutes. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair.
Yeah, like I saw it in theaters more than once for reasons I promised a friend I'd go. We went. It was about a month after it came out. I just want to say that I saw two kids come out of the theater with their dad. The son had 1,000-yard stare and the daughter was crying her eyes out. So this is not what kids should come out of a Star Wars movie. Like, this is not the kind of expression they should have on their face.
I had a Homer Simpson moment with my daughter when we walked out of it. We're walking past the line of people, and I still feel bad about this, but luckily it wasn't in my town, so I'll never see these people again. And my daughter Lily says, she goes, "So wait a minute, so Palpatine is her grandfather?" I was like, "Oh my God." There's people. It was not good, but at least she wasn't crying, because boy, that sounds like it was an awful experience for some kids.
Yeah, we didn't know what to do with these poor kids, and my friend's like, "I get it." I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." So we went and had a drink, because rather than crying in the movie theater lobby, that poor kid.
Right, good. All right, so would you consider yourself Imperial or Rebel?
Rebel. It's on my shirt.
Rebel on the shirt. Well, that was an easy one. We can move along quickly from that one. Probably no explanation needed. So what is your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
My favorite sound effect. Okay, I love the way the TIE fighters scream. I think that's intense.
Yeah.
And this is very basic, but I love the lightsaber activation. I have one from Galaxy's Edge, and I will just turn it on just to hear the noise.
So which kind of handle did you select at Galaxy's Edge?
The Clone Wars era one.
Oh, you did. Very cool.
Yeah, but it's not called Peace and Justice. Maybe it is.
I think that might be the Peace and Justice. I don't know. I didn't make one. One time.
The Clone Wars. I know that for sure.
Yeah. Did you go to LA or Florida?
LA.
Yeah. That was the one that I got to see. It was very cool. And now they're all shut down, and it's depressing.
I didn't get to see Rise of the Resistance, so I went before.
I didn't either. I because I was actually on the plane out there when I would have had to register to get there, but
that won't work.
I still have dreams of getting it. That'll happen. All right. So who's your favorite droid? R2, 3PO, or BB-8?
BB-8. I love BB-8. I love my little ball boy.
All right. What spaceship or vehicle from the Star Wars universe would you most like to own?
Okay. So as a kid, after the Phantom Menace, I had decided that no matter what I told my parents about what I wanted for the future, that was out the window, because now I want to pod race professionally. So, so if I could have a racing pod, that would be great.
That would be awesome. Which pod racer did you like the most?
I liked Anakin's. He was the hero. So I'll take Anakin. I actually have the Lego pod up there somewhere. I'll take Anakin's pod. Yeah.
That's actually on my short list of Legos that I want to get. So I would love to get that one. That's cool. A pod racer. That's great. Yeah. I still think that the Sebulba pod racer sound effect is one of my favorite sound effects. But and in fact, I remember, we were talking before about sort of walking out of Phantom Menace with a little bit of disappointment. I remember telling my best friend since I was third grade about he was like, "So tell me about the movie, and he I said my favorite part was a sound effect, and he was like, "Oh, that's not very good.
That's not a good sign."
That's a bad sign, man. All right, so Porg, Ewok, or Jar Jar Binks, which one's your favorite?
I love Porgs, but Ewoks. I love the teddy bears. There's an Ewok behind my head. Hang on. Where is he? There he is.
Oh,
I'm pointing the wrong way. There he is.
Is that one of the ones from Galaxy's Edge?
It is.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Those are so cool. I got
my way too much time at Galaxy's Edge.
And you can spend a lot of time and money there if you're not careful.
Oh, that too.
Yeah. All right. So if you could be any character in Star Wars, who would it be and why?
If I had to be like a named character, I would want to be Rey. If I just like a type of character, I would want to be a Jedi.
Sure. Why wouldn't you want to be a Jedi? But yeah, so you would choose Rey. Yeah, I think
so.
I love Rey's story, and and we talked before about the Skywalker. I just love the connection from beginning to end. I still think, for better or worse, one of my favorite scenes from Rise of Skywalker is when she returned to sliding down the hill in her stand sled. It just was like, I thought it was a nice sort of circular sort of thing of the story. There's all kinds of arguments as to whether or not she should have been at the Lars homestead or not. But
well, if I can jump back to that,
please
for me rewriting episode 9, I think I don't mind the scene. I realize it serves more as nostalgia for the audience than any kind of nostalgia for Rey. I think make it slightly different and have it be like Rey and Finn and Poe and Rose and Janet and Ben all going to the homestead, and they're all kind of poking around. Like, this was inspired by the concept art we saw where Rey is like looking at Luke's toy plane. Like, if they're all wandering around the homestead, we follow each of them. So like Poe picks up the plane because this is significant to him, and like Finn sees like the blaster marks from the stormtroopers and he knows what that is and he knows what happened here. And Rose sees like the family environment because she's very family driven, and there's something that speaks to each of them in that environment.
Yeah.
And then they all get back on the ship and leave, I think, or just have the Skywalker moment, like they're all starting to get back on the ship, and then the old lady comes up to Rey. It just that, I think, the people who didn't like the homestead scene, that might have made it sit a bit better, because she's still sliding down the sand dunes and she's still in the desert, but now she has her family. Now she's not alone anymore.
That's right. Yep.
So that's my rewrite attempt.
That's great. Yeah, maybe if I do the fan fiction novelization of the Rise of Skywalker, I'll put that.
I think I might have to. Yeah.
All right. I think I know this, but your favorite trilogy, is it the originals, the prequels, or the sequels? Actually, I don't think I know that. I know where you started, but if you had to just watch three of the movies,
the prequels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like because the originals are great, the sequels are mostly great, but I think just because the prequels, start to finish, were made as a trilogy, they knew what story they wanted to tell, and they went in and told it, for better or worse. I think it makes the most sense as a trilogy to me, and also it's my nostalgia too. That's the one I grew up with.
Right. I think I said this to Brian J. Jones last week, where we talked about the same question, and it's really the one that brings you in, right? Everybody's favorite is and Kevin Scott said the same thing with Doctor Who, which I don't know. I don't really watch Doctor Who, but your first Doctor is your favorite Doctor. Your first Star Wars movie is your favorite trilogy, and so
my second Doctor was my favorite Doctor. 9 was my first Doctor, but 10's my favorite.
I feel like I'm so far behind. I got to get into Doctor Who. I feel like
I did stop, admittedly.
Yeah, you
did. Halfway through 11 because I just got too busy, but. For what it's worth.
You're reading too many books. You gotta
clearly
some Doctor Who time. All right. So the last question on this is, what is your favorite Star Wars quote?
So I have 2, and they're actually both from the originals, considering which one my favorite is. So Leia's lengthy insult to Han is always great. The half stuck up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder, which I definitely just butchered, and everybody's gonna correct me. And then the one that will always make me cry is, "You failed, Your Highness. I'm a Jedi like my father before me." And then cue the tears.
Yeah. And that's really the essence of Star Wars, I think, right there, is that whole line. And I think, a number of people have named that as a moment that is absolutely critical. And now, thanks to this conversation, I will not look at The Last Jedi the same, because that's what Luke did again, and I never saw it that way, which is so cool.
7-year-old me watching Return of the Jedi, like, little 7-year-old kid, you'd think the Ewoks would be the highlight,
right?
But that throne room scene was the only scene I thought about after that movie. I was like, oh my God, he just loves his father so much, and he loves his son so much, and what they did for each other, and that was all that stuck with me out of that entire movie.
Then it worked, because I think that's what they were trying to get you to. That was great. That's cool. Good. Yeah. Well, Arezou, this has been so much fun. Where can people find you online if they want to, either yell at you for your Rise of Skywalker, or commiserate with your Last Jedi, or or just want to find your? I'm just kidding. Do not yell at Arezou. I will come after you.
I'll yell back. I'm rude.
Yes, I will come after you. But where's tell them about your website and your social medias.
So you can find me at my website, arezoudeetoo.com. So AREZOUDEETOO.com. I'm on Twitter. My username is arezoudeetoo, but my handle is Arezou Amin. And I'm on Instagram, arezoudeetoo as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. This has been really a lot of fun, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
I hope so.
Excellent. Thanks.